Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast, episode number 4. My name is Andrew, and I am joined by my friend Ben Brown, dad of 2 now. Ben just welcomed his second baby. How's Ben doing?
I'm doing well. I'm
Just a sigh.
yeah, it's so I had first of all, I'm tired. Definitely
You're
tired.
coherent. Ben is coherent right now.
Yeah,
So
I'm still I am tired to the point where I am drinking coffee with a shot of espresso in it at 9:15 at night.
Whoa.
Yeah, so as soon as I'm done with this, I'm gonna go pass out.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it's weird because coming home from the hospital with another infant, this is not our first experience with a new kid. But it's amazing how much you forget in such a short amount of time. Our son's only 2.5, and there's so many things we're having to like relearn and remind ourselves of that we had completely forgotten up until now.
Dude, well, this episode, we are going to dive into that. The things that you've forgotten, your experience thus far, a week in, and then we will follow it up with some questions. Sorry, I'm like not talking right now. We'll follow it up with a couple questions that we got from YouTube. I just posted, hey, are there any questions that we can answer? And we only had like 3 questions come in, so I think it's pretty appropriate for the questions that came in. They're kind of relevant to right now. So awesome. We'll just kind of dive in. You're having a coffee. I'm having a passion fruit mochi ice cream. Have you had mochi ice cream?
I have had mochi. Big
Dude.
fan. I feel like people get weird about it because of the texture.
Yeah.
Because like it's kind of chewy and sort of weird, but I don't know. I'm a good like textural eater. I like eating weird textured stuff.
Oh, it's soft, it's gummy, it's delicious. This is passion fruit flavored. Listen, man, I'm Asian, right? I grew up with trying non-traditional flavors, all right? So the texture, the dessert, all that stuff. We got this from Trader Joe's. So
Of course.
Or no, we got it from HEB. I don't know. You can find them at Trader Joe's. Anyway, they're delicious. Give them a shot. But while I enjoy this, Ben, let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. You welcome baby number 2.
Yeah.
How has it been through week number 1? Let's go.
It's been really, really good. It's been, I will say, I don't want to call it easy, because I don't think raising kids is easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we had sort of built up this idea of welcoming a second kid to being more complicated than it actually is. And honestly, I have to give a shout out to you, Andrew, and to some close friends of ours, who both kind of gave us the shot of confidence in that, knowing like, hey, bring in home another infant when you already have a toddler, you'll realize how easy infants are. And that is probably the most real thing you've said. I mean, it is so awesome. So like, my wife and I are both very fortunate that we have parental leave. So we're both off from work for a pretty significant amount of time at this point. And you kind of forget that infants, when they come home, they don't really do a whole lot except sleep and eat and need to be changed. And that's really it. So our days, our son goes to daycare, which means our days are kind of our own at this point. We have the choice on whether or not we want to leave the house or go do something. She really just needs to be fed, and then she sleeps for a couple hours, and we kind of go about our day. And she's just really along for the ride.
I forget how much like a majority of that stage of a newborn is just sleeping. Like they sleep so much, and it's actually much more hands off than you realize. And it's a slow burn for sure. But
to the point where I got concerned. I actually asked our pediatrician because I couldn't remember how much my son had slept when we first got him home, because I feel like there's such a drastic difference in how you feel between your first and second kid. And like the first one, it's like everything's new, everything's like anxiety inducing. It's all I felt like I was at like a 10 all the time.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want to break him. And now that we're on number 2, and it's like you realize, you know what? Babies are like kind of hard to break.
Yeah, they're very
pretty
resilient.
they're very resilient.
Yeah.
And, they don't really need a whole lot other than to be fed and to sleep for 18 to 20 hours a day.
Yep.
But they don't really do much. So you kind of are getting back to we're getting back to that idea of how many diapers, like tracking diapers, tracking feeding. That's the biggest commitment is
Yeah.
figuring out what to track to know that you're on track for growth and development and digestion and all their systems are working the way they're supposed to, because they can't, come up and tell you that, hey, my stomach hurts like our toddler can.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I remember we tracked the diapers and the feeding like really hard in those first weeks. And well, with our first baby, we tracked like religiously. And then like the second baby, we like tracked, a couple of weeks and we just fell off. We're like, well, everything's fine. And then third baby, we're
They're
like,
okay.
what tracking? What? No, they ate. They're fine. It's just-
Yeah.
And,
And that's
my
really the thing
gosh.
is you get less concerned with things because you realize your other kids have turned out okay.
Yeah.
And it's not
Survivor's
necessarily
bias.
maybe necessarily as it's not necessarily as critical as, maybe they would have you believe in the hospital, which you still want to do a good job, but
Hmm.
there's there's some life realities that set in,
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
parenting two kids where it's you're going to forget a diaper, you're going to forget to log a feeding. And I will say though, huge help is even if you don't have any Hatch products, is just using the Hatch baby app.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can still track stuff in there.
Hmm.
And if you have an Amazon Alexa, you can actually tell it to track things in the app. So there's a skill you can set up.
Yeah.
So even if I don't have my phone to track something, I can actually shout out to Alexa and just have her add a feeding, add a wet and dirty diaper, and it automatically adds it to the application,
So the app,
which
the
has been
primary app that
hugely
you're
helpful.
so the primary app that you're using for tracking is Hatch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because we have the Hatch Grow
Yeah. That's cool.
changing pad, which is great. But even just the app itself is super helpful. So anybody out there that is looking to do some better tracking, or you're just keeping it in the notes on your phone, Hatch is the way to go, even if you don't have their products.
Dude, that's what's up. I feel like every baby we use like a different app for tracking. It was like Sprout, and then there's like the baby tracker app or something like I forgot. It just
Yeah.
it changes. So I mean, and people ask all the time, like, hey, what's the best one? Like there isn't a best one. They all really accomplish the same thing. It's just a matter of
Right.
interface changes or compatibility with your home automation, whether it's Alexa or Google or whatever. So
Exactly.
yeah, Ben's using Hash and it seems like it's working out pretty well. We had a guy in our father figure community. He coded and like designed his own like like tracker for feeding and changes and stuff. It was a fun little thing that because like he's just he's a tinkerer, he does his own
Yeah.
apps and solders and he does all this stuff.
I
And
mean,
yeah, it was
more
cool
power
that
to him. I do
I
not have
know.
the mental capacity to
No.
follow up on something like that at this
And
point.
that just makes it all the more impressive. Like he's got a baby and it's his
Yeah.
first baby. He's like doing all the, he's doing all the actual, rigors of being a dad, but here he is like coding, his own way to like track feedings and stuff. So shout out to him. So
Wildly talented people in there.
so up to this point, so I one common question is, hey, what's harder, going from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2? I know it's only a week in, but what would you say is your assessment thus far? Going from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2? What's more of a shock to your system?
I think, as we kind of touched on earlier, I think 0 to 1 was actually harder. And I will say, one of the things that we noticed in talking to our friends who have multiple kids, right, is there is a big difference in the people who tell you that 2 kids are more work than 2 kids. So like 2 kids feel more like 3 kids, or the people who tell you that, well, 1 to 2 isn't actually as hard as 0 to 1. And the difference seems to be the people that are either stay-at-home parents or send their kids to daycare.
Yeah.
And that
Yep.
seems to be like the biggest split that we found. So like for us, we send our son to daycare. So the majority of the day, we kept him home for a couple days to get him acclimated to the new baby and really spend time as a family and bond. But we wanted to keep him in his routine. And sort of one of the biggest things that we were adamant about doing was keeping him in daycare. And so we found that with putting him in daycare, those days when he's at school, again, we're kind of back down to one kid. So we really only have an infant who's kind of eating, sleeping, needs a change, but she doesn't do a whole lot other than, kind of hang out and be a baby.
Yeah.
I think that changes a lot when you have a very active toddler running around. So on the days that we do keep him home, it's, keeping him entertained, making sure he gets his one-on-one time so he doesn't feel left out. So there's a lot more sort of mental gymnastics that have to happen, and just physical exhaustion. Like 2.5-year-olds, they just go, go, go constantly.
Right.
There is no break unless they're sleeping or using the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
really it.
Man.
So I think that 0 to 1 was a much bigger shock where everything felt like emotionally felt like you were at a 10 all the time. Like everything was just anxiety inducing because you wanted to know you were doing it right. And now that we have a kid that we look at and we're like, hey, we actually think we're doing a pretty good job with him.
Yeah.
Like just do the same things. Things feel less sort of like life or death, right? We know that there are things we can kind of let go. We know there are things that aren't necessarily as key and critical as we thought they were with our first kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, your point about having some form of help with like daycare, we did not have that. So we felt like that full force of like, okay, we have to have this balancing act of.
I feel for you.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough. But still, at least for me, I feel like this is just my experience. I feel like going 0 to 1 was still a little bit more difficult because I was so used to being like set in my own ways. I can do whatever I wanted. My wife and I were just like, hey, do you want to go to San Francisco? All right, cool. And we'll just like a week or two later, we'll bought tickets and then we'll travel whenever we want. Like just a complete total freedom. All of that gets shut down with baby number 1, and everything revolves around their schedule, their time. So with baby number 2, although it was difficult, that was for me the biggest hurdle. And I was already acclimated to that mentality by baby number 2. So because that was for me the hardest hurdle, when baby number 2 came along, it's like, I can already get through the mental challenge of like, understanding that my time isn't my own. And the work, the day in, day out grind, the changing, the lack of sleep, all that stuff. I was okay with that. It's still physically very difficult because it is just it's exhausting. It is physically an exhausting thing. And I tell people, when people have said it in Father Figure in Discord, if you hunt hard enough, like, dude, like it doesn't matter what course you take or how many YouTube videos you watch, whatever blogs you read, like nothing can prepare you for the first 2 months. It's extremely difficult. Like it's an absolute grind. Those first 8 weeks, it's just like bite your lower lip and just grind it out because it's
they just constantly need something. I mean, they're completely incapable of doing anything for themselves. I mean, even down to, burping, right?
Yeah.
It's feed your kid and then sit there and burp them to make sure that they're not going to spit up or have an issue.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we noticed just in the last, we're coming up on 2 weeks on Friday. One of the biggest things that we noticed is like, I feel like once you become a parent, there's this sort of constant underlying level of exhaustion, right? You're always just like, no matter how much I sleep or, how much downtime I have, I'm just always tired in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And then so adding another kid on top of that, I feel like there was less of a change in my level of tiredness. So like going from 0 to 1, I just remember that just absolute sort of depleted exhaustion feeling. And that was totally new for me. Like I didn't know what that was. I could sleep till 11 before if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But then going from 1 to 2, it's like, you're already kind of in that parent level of constantly tired and operating on that mental level. And then you just sort of add another one on top of that. And you're like, okay, well, if I get woken up every 3 to 4 hours in the middle of the night to change a diaper or do a feeding or whatever it is, you just sort of get up and do it and just sort of deal with that. We do fall asleep randomly throughout the day, but we're doing the best we can. And it's much less of a shock to the system.
They always say that whole like, sleep when the baby sleeps, but like the reality of actually doing that is
that's total BS. It's worst advice.
Complete BS. Absolute worst advice. But yeah, man, and you know what? The exhaustion is also compounded by the fact that you like the ways that you were able to relax before, whether it's like you kick
Hmm.
back, watch a show, play,
Right.
you know, whether you're like you're gaming or all that, like you can't find those moments of like solace or because like
Right.
you're always tired, and then the things that you used to like be able to just like rein it in and just sit down and relax, like that's also gone because you're doing other stuff, or
Right.
so it's tough to find that moment to just like rest and quiet. But yeah, it's but then like, if you're listening to this podcast, and you're an expectant parent, like it's just I don't know, you kind of get used to your new norm, and then and your body
Hmm.
snaps into it, and then like it just becomes normal, and it's totally fine, and in a good way, So
Well, and the thing that
um,
we've talked about before, right, is that you're tired, but don't you don't want to do anything else.
yeah,
Like I don't really have this desire. Like I like playing video games. I
mhm,
enjoy doing lots of things. There's certain things that I think I do, like, trying to get some training in or get like some kind of workout in just to keep my energy levels up and to
that
keep myself healthy enough to be around for my kids.
that
But it's about prioritizing which ones I'd rather do, because the underlying sort of idea behind all of this is like everything that I'm doing that's not with my kids is taking time away from my kids, right?
mm-hmm,
And that's number
mm-hmm,
one, is like time with my kids, time with my wife, time as a family. Number two is sort of everything else. And then all that has to be prioritized based on how much energy you have, how much time and attention you can give to it.
yeah,
And you really have to make some decisions on, what are the most important things. Like, my health is probably going to come second. Like, how am I eating? How am I training to like keep myself healthy for the long run? And then after that, you've got, career, you've got content creation, you've got all these other things. And it's like, okay, when do you do those and when do those get prioritized?
mm-hmm,
And, I think time frees up as the kids get older, but, it's again, you just got to make some calls and make some decisions. I don't think you're ever giving up on those things. They just
mm-hmm.
may take a back seat for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And out of curiosity, how much time are you taking off from work?
So that was a really interesting discussion, I think, that happened in the Discord, was about parental leave.
Mm-hmm.
I am incredibly fortunate in that the company that I work for actually offers 16 weeks of paid parental leave.
Paid? Oh, get out
Yeah,
of here,
so
man.
it's like
Amazing.
unheard of.
Yeah.
But we are, so you can apply as like the primary parent if you're the only one that works for the company. Not everybody takes that time, but it
Yeah.
is something that's available to us.
Let me
So
just
it's
real
something
quick.
that I did with my son. But yeah, go ahead.
I just want to interrupt for context here, because apparently, according to our statistics, people listen to this outside of the United States, which is amazing. That's why I'm wearing my
Yeah,
Brazil jersey today,
there
repping
you
Brazil.
go.
All the support from
You're
Brazil.
gonna
What's
bump us
up?
to number one.
There you go. Yeah, love Brazil, but in the United States, paid family leave isn't exactly a thing. Like we have to
Hmm.
circumvent the system by either, and this is both men and women, right?
Hmm.
Uh, uh, we have to circumvent the system by either like claiming some sort of like disability, and then and having like kind of a disability leave, either and we have laws in place like FMLA, but it doesn't necessarily like it doesn't give us any sort of paid family
Right.
leave. It just
It
says
just made
that
it mean your
you can
job is protected for a little while,
exactly
but
you can come
you
back
don't
to your
necessarily get a
job.
paycheck.
Exactly. You can come back to your job. They can't, having a baby isn't a fireable offense. You take whatever time you need so that you can come back to a job and still have it. But yeah, as that's a whole topic that we can probably dive into. And I've made videos about this
Oh, I have
because it just
lots
makes
of
me
feelings
angry.
about that. I
Oh,
have
it
lots
makes
of
me so
feelings
angry.
about
It's
that.
just like, but it's tough. We're one of only two developed nations that doesn't offer any sort of like formal uh, you know, paid family leave policy. So it's
It
difficult.
is
It's
wild.
difficult. But anyway,
Yeah.
but luckily for you, you do
Hmm.
have an employer that's
Very,
able to
very
hook you up with
fortunate.
16 weeks. And how much of the 16 are
Yeah.
you taking?
Full thing. I've set it up so I'm able to take the full 16 weeks. It's something I was able to do with my son. And here's the really interesting part too, is that, so my wife, her parental leave with the company that she's with, she gets I believe a maximum of 6 weeks at 100% pay. Now she's the one having the baby, right? She gets 6 weeks of full pay, and then I think she can take up to like 8 weeks of like 65% pay. And then after that, if she wants to go to 12 weeks, she has to use her own PTO.
It just
So
doesn't
at
make
that
sense
point,
to me.
I know, at that point, she's using her own time off.
Dude, it takes 8 weeks to recover from a C-section
Right,
surgery.
right.
It takes 8
It's
weeks,
wild.
and you're given 6 to recover.
Yeah, so
It's
she's
just-
given 6, and then she's given 2 extra weeks because she had a C-section. So she's
Yeah.
given 2 weeks of like disability because she had a child cut out of her body.
Yeah.
Which
and in
is
that time, they're
absolutely insane.
and I think I'm not sure if it was like your doctor's orders or whatever, but generally speaking, and it's so unrealistic. They're like in that recovery time, you like shouldn't do any heavy lifting. You shouldn't really hold the baby too much, and
yeah.
like it's just like, bro. But and so in the
That's
first
not
8
real
weeks, I need to
life.
recover. I can't hold my own baby and lift heavy things,
Right.
but I can resume my own regular workload after 6 weeks, right?
And if you have a toddler at home, I mean, our toddler's 28 pounds. You're not supposed to lift more than 10. So he's gonna want to be picked up. And so now you're doing this sort of dance of, okay, if he wants to be picked up or do something, I have to go get him, trade the baby off. Like you're kind of doing this constant rotation of me picking up and moving the kids, which is definitely a challenge. It's something we haven't really been through before because we haven't had two. But yeah, I mean, your toddler doesn't understand that. They don't understand why mom can't pick them up. And it's definitely a real challenge, and I think a real miss in just American companies that we just don't take care of people the way we should. Especially just not across the board. It's not a consistent experience.
Right. And it's a very difficult topic too, because now we're getting into like government policies, and
Right.
it becomes a topic of like of politics, which that just never ends well. And like the biggest question is like, okay, paid family leave. Okay, you want paid time off? Sure. Who pays for that? Is that taxpayer dollars? Does it come from the government, or does that fall on individual companies, right? And what regulations do they have to fall under? Do sanitation companies offer the same thing as big tech companies? So it's difficult, and it's hard. It's a very hard topic to navigate, but I do think that it is a problem, and new parents, expectant parents, need some form of, especially that first year is crucial, man. You need those early weeks to bond without the pressure of I need to keep working. That's just not good for the family.
I mean, that's one of the most amazing things about being able to bring your kid home and having this time with them, right? Is getting to know them, because I feel like one of the things you sort of appreciate more, I think, with the second than with the first, is the amount of change they go through in that short period, that 3-4 month period, that first 3 months of life, where they're figuring out how to eat. All their body systems are starting to work. They're really starting to open their eyes and look at you and smile and react to you and know that you're there. And that is a tremendously important time, I think, for both the parents and the kids, because you're figuring each other out. You're learning, likes, dislikes, behaviors, understanding how they react to you, how you react to them, how you can best sort of serve them as a parent. I'm incredibly thankful for the time, I got to have with my son, in that first 16 weeks, because I just remember in that time, it was like, he rolled over for the first time. He was like picking his head up. He was doing all these incredible milestone things that I would have missed had I not been able to take that time off.
Right. No, you definitely want to be there and be present. But it's really cool that you were fortunate enough to have that. I had 2 weeks off when our youngest our second was born. I remember that, and I was right back at work. And you feel bad. You want to be home. You want to be there for a lot of those pivotal moments. You want to be helpful. To your spouse, and it's a tough thing to navigate. But Yeah. But back to new baby for you,
Yeah.
right? So we know that you're tired. We know that, when it comes to mom, how's mom doing? How's mom recovering?
Mom's doing really well.
Okay.
I think we've talked about it. I think she kind of feels similar to the way I do. Obviously she's recovering physically from a C-section. This is her second C-section. So we kind of know roughly what recovery looks like. I will say the overall experience was much different. Our first birth was with an emergent C-section. This one was actually a planned, scheduled C-section. So the whole experience was entirely different, much
Mhm.
less frantic. She didn't labor at all. So she actually is kind of up and moving around, and we've been going out and running errands. She seems to be feeling pretty good. Obviously still sore and still kind of protecting her incision and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Making
Wearing a
sure that
diaper,
yeah,
doing all this, a
yeah,
lot
that's
of
one of the things
bleeding.
they
No.
right. That's all the stuff that, like, if you don't have a kid or haven't had a kid before, it's like they do not talk about all the recovery.
Yeah. And there's,
And you're never. I have never had more respect for my wife and the endurance, the things she's able to endure
Mhm.
for the sake of our kids
Oh yeah.
than like watching her have kids, or like again, both
Oh
through
yeah.
C-section. But man, just the things she went through after the first one to come back and say, I still want to have another kid, was like mind blowing to me.
My wife says that she's like, I don't know what it is because like it's grueling. Like even leading up to
Hmm.
baby, it's
Yeah.
40 weeks of like my wife suffers from chronic migraines. So like, it's 40 weeks of
Oh,
not taking her migraine medicine.
right.
She not eating food that she loves like sushi or like cold
Hmm.
cuts or whatever. So that like
Right.
that right there is one part of like the endurance that we take. Us as husbands, it's just like it's hard to acknowledge that like, oh man, you're sacrificing business because a lot of it is just kind of like, man, you're really mad at me right now and you're uncomfortable and there's like a
Yep.
lot of like infighting and bickering and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But
Because it's
like,
hard to understand.
yeah, it
Like, it's hard
is.
to understand because you're
Yeah,
not going through it. It's hard to
exactly.
understand
We're
like the
not feeling
hormonal
that.
changes and I can't have a sandwich and I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'm giving up all of these things
Right.
to make sure our kid is healthy,
Exactly.
and as protected as they can be.
Yeah, and we'll never understand
No,
that, right?
no.
I live from a physical perspective, but then the birth happens, and that's when, like, at least for me, like, holy crap! Like I remember, like thinking, like, geez, man, there's no one stronger than my wife. Like that, this is phenomenal. But then, yeah, the recovery after is not sexy. Like it is,
Mm,
it's grueling, and like. For C-section, it's one thing, right? And then
right.
vaginal, there's so much bleeding, and they're
Yeah.
literally like wearing diapers, and it's just
Oh,
like
yeah. The mesh underwear, the liners,
so bad. So
and
I feel so
you don't,
bad.
and there's like nothing as a husband, there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's nothing you
No,
can do other than like, how can I help and kind of, bring things like, invest in like cooling pads
right,
and
right.
honestly, I think as a dad and as a husband, I think we owe it to our partners to do some research.
Hmm, hmm.
Like if you don't know what's coming, just do some research, see what's out there, understand like what that recovery process looks like so that you at least have an idea of what's normal.
Hmm.
Because I think it's our role and our position to when she's recovering, there is this, and this is really surprising to me. There's this big gap, right? So she had a major surgery
Hmm.
to take a baby out of her body. The next thing you hear from your OB is like, all right, I'll see you in 6 weeks. So there's a 6 week gap.
Yeah.
There's not another major surgery where you're going to have your abdomen opened and then no one's going to see you for 6 weeks.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you need to understand what that recovery looks like so you can look for signs and issues that might be, worrisome, what's worrying, what's not,
Yeah.
because you need to be on her side
Right.
and help her figure those things out.
Yeah.
Because she's going to have enough on her mind, especially if it's your first. So you have to be a strong advocate for your partner at that point. So Educate yourselves, guys. Research it. It's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's, but it is what it is. If you're going to have kids, this is a part of it. Like the recovery is a part of it.
Dude, it's funny that you say that because I remember because like when you take baby home, like you have to take the baby to the pediatrician within like the first 48 hours or so.
Yeah.
And I remember going to that appointment and my wife, like it's a pediatrician. The doctor is there to check out the baby. But then my wife would just like ask questions about herself. Just like, so like, I'm feeling this, like that's normal, right? And I'm like,
yeah,
this is the wrong doctor. But like she's a mom who's been through it too. And so like, so she found a little bit of comfort and solace through a pediatrician talking her through things when that's not what the appointment was for. But yeah, I remember doing that. But to your point, being an advocate to your wife is something that I've mentioned in videos. I repeatedly talk about that in the course, and I think in the first month 1 and month 2 of the Father Figured course that we have, we interview. I think we've got interviews with OBs, with actual practicing OBGYNs, just talking about like the signs to look out for. And I think a lot of guys who like watch that, they're like, I need no part of this. I'm skip this part of the course and go into the other stuff. I'm like, it's there for you because it's important to know, man.
Yeah. And you've got to understand it, right? Like that's part of the heavy lift of being in a balanced relationship is it is not something that she can and should go through on her own.
No.
It's something that's incredibly important for us to understand because we're just as much a part of that process. If we want to be a part of the fun stuff, like, picking out gear and designing a room and whatever, right? Raising the kids once they come out, that whole period is incredibly important. And I think, you can build your relationship up through the stuff that is, that's some of the most pivotal stuff in a relationship, right? Is the things that aren't sexy, the things that aren't fun, the things that are like really challenging to deal with because it's something that's so outside of our comfort zone. But you got to be there for it. That's all you can do.
You're talking about this, kind of making me recall a story of when our first was born. I was like, our baby was asleep. My wife was in the bathroom, just kind of sitting there, just chilling. And my wife calls me over. She's like, Andrew. I was like, what's up? She's come here. You got to see this. I was like, okay. And she's like hovering over the toilet. Maybe this is TMI, but this is dad life, right? This is real dad life. Hey, she's hovering over the toilet with like her diaper basically just like kind of down a little bit. And inside of the diaper, it looks like, there's blood, but it's accompanied with what basically looked like a miniaturized version of like a Jello shot, like a strawberry Jello shot, just like a giant mucusy shot of Jello, just a blood. And I was like, what that fell out of you? And she's like, is this bad? Like, am I blood clot?
Like, is this bad? Am I dying?
What is this? I was like, I hopped on Google and then she like checked her due date groups and stuff like that. And apparently it's not something to freak out about, but it was a very alarming sight, but
you start learning about like, okay, what blood clots are normal? What do they look like? What's the size? What's the frequency? How often should you be passing them? And those are all the things, like you said, those are all the things like they're not fun to talk about, but it's something that everybody goes through and no one really shares outside of probably a very small circle of moms. And I think more dads need to know about it. Because I think given the opportunity, I think most dads want to help. And I think there's a sort of barrier of knowledge where it's like, if I don't know, I can't help. And then the next move is to just like, well, kind of ignore it and she'll let me know if she needs my help.
Exactly.
But the more we can teach, the more we can talk about it, the more we can kind of open up these conversations, I think the better off we're all going to be.
And guys, if you're, it's not like we have like the most massive, podcast following or whatever, but if you are a consumer of Dad Verb content on YouTube, of this podcast, you're that guy. You're an involved guy, and we're just so happy that you're here because we are just in a generation of guys who are much more involved and engaged with the family, and I love it. I'm here for it. We are making that content for it. So we're grateful that you're here along for the ride because the reality is there's also a large segment of the population that still has very traditional values and ideology of mom suffers through this and just like, that's not my place. I do something else. But being at the very least informed, will do wonders for you in your relationship. I'm sure in those early weeks. But let me ask you this real quick, man. So, how have you defined your role in this first week or so? Right. So if one hurdle is like mom breastfeeds, right? That's her thing. Right. I'm not breastfeeding. So I don't know what your thing is. I don't know if you're formula feeding or what, but like, what has been established as kind of like, all right, me, dad, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm taking care of while mom handles this.
Yeah, so that's been an interesting challenge, I think, for baby number one. It was just dig into all the gross stuff, right? Change the diapers, clean up the spit up, and dig into a lot of the household maintenance stuff. Like if you're not already doing this kind of stuff, guys, like laundry, dishes, really just like table stakes. Yeah. Figure it out, get it done. Mom's recovering; she's got enough to do. You're gonna have to step up there. So, it's doing dishes, doing laundry, making sure that kind of the house is run the way it needs to be. And then, having two kids, really with the youngest, with our newest, it's again, digging into that dirty stuff, right? So if she's up at 2 a.m. doing a feed, I know that there's going to be a dirty diaper. It's my job to get up and change her, kind of rock her back to sleep, make sure she's good so that she can lay in her bassinet so that mom can lay down and start getting some sleep before that next 2-hour alarm rolls back around and the baby's going to wake back up hungry and she's going to have to do another 20 or 30 minute feed. I can't do that, so that's a way that I can help. I can do all of the stuff around that feed. So like when the baby starts to cry, get her up, get mom settled, kind of help with that. Especially again, since she had a C-section, she can't really lift a whole lot at this point. Making sure like things are stocked. So like I have the diaper bag. I make sure, we've got everything that we need when we leave the house. Like, do we have diapers? Do we have wipes? Do we have cream? Do we have this, that, and the other thing so that we don't have to think about it? Do we have the stroller and all the stuff that we need? So that when she's walking out the door, she's just got to worry about herself and really whatever she's carrying. And then, I would say with like our toddler, with him, a lot of it is just trying to spend as much one-on-one time as I can with him. Yeah. Since usually, again, mom's feeding the baby every couple hours. He doesn't necessarily understand that. And he wants to, be in her lap, be with her. And so if I'm running to the store or if I'm doing something in the garage, even just like working out, I take him with me. I'm like, hey, buddy, why don't you come work out with me? And he'll come out and do his little like kettlebells and, watch a show or something and play with some cars while I work out. Yeah. Or he'll come with me to the hardware store or the grocery store or whatever. Just having that time with him to help him remember how special he is, even though there's a new baby in the house, I think is really helpful. And, vice versa, when I can, take the infant so that my wife can have one-on-one time with our oldest. Yeah. So doing that switch to say, all right, I'm going to take the baby upstairs and just, chill out with her for a little bit, give her a bottle, whatever it is, so that you can spend time with our son so that he, again, doesn't feel like his mom's being, taken away by the new baby. So it's really just, filling in those gaps, trying to keep the house run, trying to, help with the kids where I can, occupy our toddler when I can. And then helping with the infant, as needed, I guess, as much as I can do.
Dude, you're a facilitator, man. You're absolutely crushing it right now. I think at the end of like our first month in the course that we've got like a PDF. Mm-hmm. One of the guys in the group actually made it. It's like a list of 15 things that you could be doing if it's not directly related to like the baby. Because sometimes it's like, well, what is my role? Like, okay, other than like caring for the baby, like what else am I supposed to be doing? And there's like a lot of unsexy things. Like there's like insurance and hospital bills and like, managing iCloud space. You're going to be taking a buttload of photos, So it's just
make sure invest in that 2 terabyte plan.
For real, $10 a month, worth it. No, but yeah, it's, I haven't, it's in the course, but I feel like maybe I should figure out a way to like free that up and provide it just have it out there because it's a very, very, very helpful resource.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to move on to some of the questions that have come in and see if maybe you can relate to any. So the first one's
Yeah.
probably going to be pretty deep. It's, did you experience any prenatal postpartum anxiety or depression or any sort of quote unquote identity crisis around the time of your first child's birth? That was submitted by Bree Kowski.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I'll just go ahead and answer it for me. This is a very common thing that I like to try to bring some form of awareness to. Guys can have postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I've had like really angry, salty moms being like, that's not a thing. Like, guys cannot have that. I went through this. My body was torn apart, not yours. That's not a thing.
Right.
But
don't take that away from me.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, I fully get where that sentiment would come from, but that also is a very dangerous to guys who are like, no, I actually am suffering from this, and I guess I'm not allowed to have that. So let me just sit with this and bottle it up and get violent and belligerent very quickly. So like, it's something that I've done videos on. I've interviewed a couple. We've got some resources on that within the course. I'm not so sure about on YouTube, but personally for me, I haven't honestly dealt with it. It's just not something that I've dealt with, but I know many guys who have, and I know at least one or two doctors that specialize in addressing that, because it is a very, very real thing, that identity crisis. I mean, I had moments of frustration. I've had moments of like, dude, my time isn't my own anymore. Like, what happened to my wife? Like, our sex drive is just down. Like, we're not like, when are we gonna have sex again? Like, we've had those kinds of moments where it's just like, man, this is frustrating. And things aren't the way they were before kids. There was kind of like that
things are never the same.
Yeah. So I grappled with that to some extent, but it wasn't anything that I really ever like, dwelled on heavily to the point where like it got to like a very concerning or difficult level. So honestly, I don't know if I'm the best person to be like, to categorize that as like, not PPD,
right?
Or because maybe it is in an acute form. I don't know, but I've never felt like I've dealt with anything like that. And it's, I just kind of maybe dismissed it as that's just new dad stuff. It'll sort itself out.
Yeah.
And I guess it did, but for others, it's tough.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's much more common than people realize, right?
It is.
Especially postpartum anxiety, I think is a really big challenge for a lot of new dads. And one of the things we found is like, even with new moms, is like they talk about postpartum depression all the time. You get screened for it, you get questions about it every time you go into the doctor. But postpartum anxiety, which can be, debilitating at times, is something that isn't talked about much. Now, for me personally, I would say I probably experienced some anxiety, not necessarily like didn't know what my role was, because I think where I dug in, with our first and second was the same. Where I dug in was like, just where can I help? And sort of that was my focus. But I think part of that was also, I dug in that way because those were things that I could control. So when other things felt out of control, like my time wasn't my own, my wife is now completely focused on this little human being that she's got to feed and care for. The only things that I could really control were, can I keep the house clean? Can I make sure the bills are paid on time? Can I make sure the diapers are changed when they need to be changed? Those are the things that where I can make a difference.
Yes.
And sort of, I end up, I think, doubling down on the things that the minutia, because I can control those, and it gives me a sense of like sort of order, right. In the chaos. So I don't know if that's, necessarily, PPD or anxiety. I think it's probably driven a bit by some anxiety of, I don't really know what to do. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm, good enough.
Right.
Am I a good dad? Like that's a constant worry.
Yeah.
Am I am I like messing up my kids? And I think from day one to now, you still think about that all the time.
Oh, all the time.
But I think that's also part of like parenting of the people that I know that are great parents are generally worried that they're not great parents.
Yeah.
If they're not worried about it and they don't really care, then they may not necessarily be that good.
Yeah, stress comes from giving
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the phrase. That's
Yeah,
the phrase.
you
You're
care.
all really stressed
You
because
care.
it's like, dude, are they eating enough? Are they getting the right calories? Are they growing on their curve? Is this like I'm really tired and I just need them to have screen time, but like is this damaging
Right.
to them? Like are they going
Right.
to have like bad attention disorders? Like what, am I doing something or like what's happening?
Yeah.
Like you're constantly
Yeah,
thinking
how
that,
badly
like,
am I screwing up my kid?
just, I know the Montessori method is good, but I'm more of like a diet Montessori kind of a person. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if it could go full out. Like it's hard. So but
Yeah.
am I
No, I
am
don't
I
think
bad
it's
for
good
that?
either.
So
Yeah.
it's I don't
It's
know.
a challenge, and I think the anxiety is just sort of I don't think it's been to the point where I was constantly worried about my child. I'll say probably in the beginning. And I think every parent goes through this, right? Is when you're on that learning curve of like, we don't know what's happening. We don't know if they're safe. Every parent goes through this, like 2 a.m, wake up in a panic and like scramble over your significant other to like put your hand on your kid's chest to like make sure they're still breathing.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
we have monitors that tell us if they're not breathing.
Oh yeah, we
But
do.
but you don't trust it. But you still don't like. There's something in
Never.
your gut that says like it can't be right. It's a mistake. My kid died and I slept through it. And you need to like physically check because even on our second, like I did it a couple nights ago. 1:30 in the morning, she slept for like 4 hours, and I woke up just in an absolute panic that I had swaddled her too tight or whatever. And I, did the whole thing. I scrambled over and then I just sort of like nudged her a little bit. And then she did her, she kind of wiggled and stretched. And I was like, oh, okay, she's all right.
Yeah.
And then I could, go back to sleep. Who knows? Maybe that's anxiety. Maybe that's just because I care and want to make sure she's safe. I don't know.
So real quick, tell the people what monitor are you using? Out of curiosity.
So we are on the second generation of the Miku.
Miku
So
Pro?
we had the first Miku, which we liked. I don't think we had as many issues as you did with ours.
Yeah.
But did decide to
had
upgrade
issues.
to the Miku Pro.
That's good.
Just because there's some extra features and better resolution and all that stuff. So have really, really enjoyed that so far. Although I would not recommend wall mounting them anymore. The stand seems to be the way to go.
Ours is currently wall mounted in in our daughter's nursery.
I took the what are they called? The cable hides off.
Yeah.
And it peeled some of the paint off, like the top
Yeah.
layer of paper
It's gonna
off the
happen to us
sheetrock.
too. Yeah.
So-
I'm gonna have to patch it and repaint. It's gonna be
The
something like-
only way that I found to make it work was using a hair dryer to heat up the adhesive.
and get it all
and then
loose.
peeling it. Yeah, and then it would peel off much easier without taking the paint off. But that's super tedious. It took me like
Gotcha.
half an hour to remove something that's supposed to be safe to remove from my wall.
Yeah, Miku is not a sponsor. Okay, then we're not. These happen to be the monitors that we use, and I've been a
Just
big
like
fan
them.
of Nanit for the last few years. It's just this go. I just wanted to use something different, but yeah, that's in case you were curious. That's what we've got going on. And the next question, which is just the biggest, like we could do a full episode on this. How do you create time for yourself away from kids/spouse? What do you do in that alone time? Okay, well,
That's
to be
tough.
honest with you, when you're in that newborn stage, it's very, very difficult to free up any sort of time because the focus is, especially in those early weeks, it's just baby, right? Like you really
Yeah.
don't have time for yourself. I mean, yeah, like at least with the first baby, it wasn't like that. With the second baby, we were a little bit more like, oh no, we can do stuff, right? We can once the baby goes down, so let's watch one of our shows on Netflix. Let's do that. But like, I think that's an even bigger question as like your kids get older, and maybe you can speak to this from more having a toddler, or 2-year-old,
Right.
but and I made a full video about this, like how to make time for yourself, how to do like, your own self-care, but it's like really being intentional about your time. Like,
Right.
like we have like an established schedule on like a Google Calendar, right? Where I have like a workout time, like 10 to 11 a.m. Like that's my time. It's like not negotiable. Like that is my time to do
Right.
my workouts and my thing, and my wife knows that. And then she has her blocks of time where she does whatever it is she wants. I don't question it. She can do whatever the heck she wants. And I know that that's my time to step up and be dad and not,
Right.
not be, inhibited by work. And that time is for me to be dad and be focused, so that she doesn't have to worry in the back of her head, like, oh, the kids are going to need me. They're going to nag at me to get
Right.
whatever. Like, no, this time is your time. That's not negotiable. So we are very intentional about that and communicating. Like as we record this podcast right now, my wife is having a bachelor night with her friends. Right. And she put that in the Google Calendar. She's like, hey, Tuesday
Nice.
nights are bachelor night with my girlfriends. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want. And usually, I would either be with the kids, but because it's so late, I'm recording a podcast, but we're just very intentional about establishing what time is ours and being open and
Right.
communicating about that. Because it's really easy to say, like, I don't have time. I have to do this. I have to do that. Like, well, no.
Right.
I can guarantee you that there is time. You just need to make that time and be intentional about putting forth the effort to like freeing up whatever block that you need to do whatever
Right.
it is that you want. I don't know if it's gaming or whatever, but
Right.
yeah.
And that's what
just
we
being
talked about a
intentional.
little bit earlier is like that prioritization of,
Yes.
prioritize in order to be a good parent, you do need to prioritize yourself at some points. You need to prioritize yourself and your relationship. So if you are still in a, two-parent household and you're in a relationship, that requires maintenance. That relationship was there before your kids were there, and hopefully that relationship will be there after your kids have left your house.
Exactly.
And if you're not doing the work to maintain that, then that's where you really start to get into trouble, because in order to parent effectively, to communicate with each other effectively, you still have to have that base layer of, like attraction and understanding and communication. And that comes from reminding yourselves why you got together in the first place. Like my wife and I have been together since we were 19. We met in college. We're 35 now. So like it's been a long time. We've really watched each other grow up from our, late teens, early 20s, where we were like terrible college people, to, being in our mid 30s, on our way to 40 with 2 kids and a house. It's a big difference, but so much of that, when we look back on it, there are so many times where when we ended up in an argument or we ended up in a situation that we weren't happy with, is because we either weren't making time for each other or weren't communicating effectively. We weren't making that time to have that communication, or we weren't protecting the things that were important to us as individuals. And so like you said, like workout time is really important to me, because that's the thing that keeps me like level-headed. I feel like that's something that helps me maintain my balance, my sort of, I know when I don't work out for a certain amount of time, my anxiety skyrockets.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah. I
really
get cranky.
snippy with people. I get
too.
cranky,
Me too.
and I'm just like, it's almost like being hangry.
Yeah.
But I'm just like,
Yeah.
I have to go move. It's like I have too much energy and I just can't keep it bottled up, and it comes out in unproductive ways.
Yeah.
And then, getting over to like the relationship piece, having a 2-year-old, we're fortunate enough that we have family around us, and, our 2-year-old will go spend time at grandma's house. So he'll do an overnight. So every, month or two,
It's so
we'll do an
nice.
overnight at my mom's house, and we'll go on a date. So we'll either do like, a couple's date where we go out with some friends of ours, or we'll do just, dinner, just the two of us, where there's no kids. It's just us. The whole idea is that we always eventually end up talking about the kids, but the idea is that time is for us to just be grown-ups, be a couple, talk about the things that are important to us, talk about the things we don't get to talk about on a regular basis, and really get back to knowing, again, why it is that we got together and reminding ourselves why that's so important.
Man, you're hitting a lot of points. I did make a video on this, and I'm trying to find when I uploaded it. I uploaded it in December, either November or December of 2022. If you go onto the channel, the title of the video is called Making Time for Self-Care, Tips for New Dads and Moms. If you want to go check out that video for a little bit more of a thorough walkthrough on the topic of, being intentional, prioritizing your marriage. I think I correlate the marriage to like the foundation of a family. And if the wind blows, the tree topples if it's on a weak foundation, right? So you always have to make sure that foundation is strong, roots are strong. So no matter which way the wind blows, whether it's kids throwing you for a loop, financial, whatever, that marriage is, or that partnership, that relationship that you have with your partner, it's well grounded and nothing, it's going to make the family unshakable. So anyway, I want to just kind of round things out here. Because we're coming up on an hour here, and I like to try to keep these around an hour, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a good time.
So I just want to, we usually do our drafts, right? We haven't really prepped any of that this week because we wanted to stay focused on Ben's first week home with the baby. But I just want to share one thing that I've really enjoyed this week, and it kind of goes along the line of making time for myself. I'm not a big gamer. Like, I enjoy video games. I enjoy like strategic card games. That's why I freaking love Pokemon. Yeah. I'm a nerd. But I started playing Hogwarts Legacy. I have a PS5 that has literally sat dormant. I like rarely turn it on. I've spent, games are so freaking expensive now. They're ridiculous.
So expensive.
I bought Spider-Man Miles Morales, and then I bought Ghost of Tsushima, and it was like this.
Oh, Ghost of Tsushima is so good,
dude. That game,
so good.
So I haven't even started that. It's like a book, right? It's just sitting on my bed. So I haven't even cracked the book open yet because I'm swinging through New York, and I'm terrible at these games. But it's just such a fun experience, especially me growing up with like Mario Kart 64. Like, these games are so radically immersive and just open world, amazing. So anyway, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'll come back to Miles Morales one day. I'll start Ghost of Tsushima eventually. I've been waiting for Hogwarts Legacy for like 2-3 years, and it is phenomenal. It has been so fun to just wander around Hogwarts. Are you a Harry Potter person, or is that kind of not your flavor?
No. So the first Harry Potter books, I want to say, came out when I was in like 6th grade.
Yeah.
I think somewhere around there, somewhere around middle school. I remember I had an English teacher that was like reading them to us. So yeah, it's been a part of my life for a long, long time.
Dude.
I'm much more like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings.
I'm a Star Wars guy too.
Right. So I think the whole world of Harry Potter is super cool. But I probably haven't gotten into it as much as I could.
Dude, so I mean, you talk about like how it was part of your childhood, but like it was your dream to like go to.
Yeah, I can't say I didn't want to be a
Hogwarts.
wizard after reading them.
You wanted to be sorted into a house, right? You wanted to, to
100%.
do the whole experience. This game is like putting you through it, man. It is so freaking fun. And like,
so do you get to like pick a wand? Like,
yeah,
do you go through the whole like, dragon heartstring and go to
100%.
Ollivanders and all that stuff?
Yes, dude. So you can do it in game. I did it in like the app before. So you like take this test, right? And I was sorted into Gryffindor. My Patronus, right? To like deflected Dementors. My Patronus was a black stallion, and my wand was I don't even remember. It was like there's so many woods. I don't remember. So I was like, this is cool, but I don't want to be in Gryffindor. I wanted to be, because like that was my whole childhood. Like Gryffindor, I've seen the common room. I've played like the games on PS2. I was like, no, I want something different. And so I based my choice off of what the common room dormitory looked like, right? So Slytherin, it looked like a dungeon. Not a fan of it. Ravenclaw looked like a library. Whatever. Gryffindor, been there, done that. Hufflepuff.
I heard Hufflepuff is dope.
Hufflepuff looks so dope, right? It's like they've got like greenery and plants growing everywhere. It's like a place where they would probably like grow weed or something. I don't know. Like it's
the
beautiful.
the campus dealers.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like so, and in my head, like Hufflepuff is where like the creatives are. That's where the artists are. That's where like the cool,
Like
the
a lot of
drama
bean
geeks
bags.
for sure. And so I'm like, you know what? I think Hufflepuff is my flavor, right? They're not
Somebody's
like
hacky sacking in the corner.
they're just chill, man. They're cool. They're not like the pretentious nerds. They're not evil. They're not like brave, pompous. Like they're just like, well, we're cool, man. We're just run of the mill. So I'm Hufflepuff, right? So I get sorted into there, and then my wand, I like chose. We just did like a little bedroom redesign where we got like this a very light, like kind of beech wood or like ashy wood kind of dressers and stuff like that. So I'm like, I want light wood. I want a light wooden wand. So I went with aspen wood with dragon heartstring. And then I intentionally like answered these questions weird so that my Patronus would be a dragon, because dragons are just way more badass than a black stallion.
Who doesn't want a dragon
Right.
flying out of the end of their wand?
I was
Like,
born
that's
a year of
so
the
sick.
dragon. So
There you go.
So yeah, and I'm Chinese. I'm half Chinese. I'm like, you know what, dragon is in my spirit. You know,
It's lucky.
right?
It's incredibly lucky.
So, but dude, it's been really fun just traversing through like Hogwarts and going into Hogsmeade and like the actual like gameplay of like going into like a battle with the wands. It's like, dude, it is so fun. It's such an immersive experience, and I haven't been able to play it that much, but it's been the most like video gameplay that I've had in years. So I got to do that, and maybe after we sign off, I might get some more Hogwarts in. But
Yeah,
that's been
I'm
my
telling
favorite
you-
thing of the week. I want to
Telling
kind
you,
of turn to you.
Don't start Ghost of Tsushima unless you have a lot of time.
Dude.
It's the open world is incredible. It's such a good game, and the story's amazing. It's like if you liked like Red Dead Redemption or anything like that, where it's just constant choices, and if you like that, I mean, you're right in
with
there.
Japanese history of like samurai, like
Well,
I
and just
freaking love
the
it.
scenery that you go through on like
Gorgeous.
the different parts of the island and all that is unbelievable. Sort of the cinematics of it are really cool. It's like it's just a playable movie at this point.
Yeah. It's just so crazy where it's come from, because like I grew up with video games, but they are not like they are today. You know, it's
I
and
used
I'm
to
a
get so
console
fired
guy.
up
Like
about I used to
What's
get
it?
so fired up about like Metal Gear Solid
Oh,
back
yeah.
in the day.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
all the whole Metal Gear Solid franchise, because like that was the most immersive experience. And you look back on it now, and like the PlayStation 1 and 2 versions of it, like they look terrible. Like
Garbage.
people's faces are
Garbage.
like angular. They have
Yeah,
like triangle faces, and like their eyes don't move.
Yeah.
And they
I've
have
played
like
a lot
big
of
like
Final
club.
Fantasy.
Yeah, they have like
Final
club
Fantasy, same thing.
hands.
Oh yeah.
And I
Oh,
remember
that's
seeing
so
that and being
funny.
like, this is so sick. I'm so
Yeah.
excited about this. Like,
Like-
look at the graphics. They're so real.
Freaking Final Fantasy VII, the main character Cloud, he's like a legendary character. He's such he was like such an iconic PlayStation character. I look back
His
at like,
spiky hair.
oh yeah, with a giant oversized sword that he's thin little arms. He was not lifting enough. He can't actually handle that sword. But I remember like looking back, I'm like, dude, that guy is pixelated AF, man. Like
It's so bad. It's
but,
so terrible.
Yeah, dude, it's so fun to see how it's evolved. But yeah, I'm such a console person. Like I'm not like a big PC gamer. I love my old classic, like,
Yeah, I like having a controller.
yeah, having a controller. That's just the way it is. But anyway, that's been my fun thing for the week. What about you, man? Other than having a baby,
Basically, it's just a kid. Yeah, basically, it's just bringing a
figured.
life into the world.
I figured. Man.
Yeah, other than that, it's been a lot of family time, which has been really amazing. Watching our son transform into like a big brother is like an unbelievable experience. He's handled it surprisingly well. Little fits of rage here and there of like, needing attention and all that, but
Yeah.
I think it's to be expected. But yeah, I mean, I think if I can, get an opportunity to do some things that will help me relax a bit, maybe play some games. This is going to sound super like old people excitement. I'm really excited because my wife and I have committed to like purging our home while we're off.
Marie
Because
Kondo.
because we both looked around and we were like, we can't keep up. Like we have so much stuff and there's just so much happening.
Dude.
And where we want to put our focus is like really on the kids and
Mm-hmm.
like travel, and like we're redoing the backyard and we're doing a bunch of stuff around the house. And we
Yeah.
realized like we just need to go through like the years of stuff that we've moved with and it's still in boxes and that has just been like shoved in a closet and never touched. So I finally got like this commitment where I sat down and said like, okay, we've got all this time off.
Yep.
Our son's in daycare, which means our days are pretty free.
Mm-hmm.
Can we purge? Like, let's just get through all this stuff. Let's purge, let's organize, let's like just downsize all our stuff just to free up, just mental capacity to manage our home.
Dude.
So that's going to be a big project over the next couple of weeks that I'm super excited about.
You should be, man, because that is one of the most liberating feelings. Like you just like feel clean. It's just like a mental, just oh my gosh, I just let all this heaviness go, all this crap, just stuff, and it's like so hard because like with a baby, there's just stuff everywhere.
So much
There's like
stuff.
pump parts and bottles. There's just things everywhere. It's just like, oh my, what the heck happened to our
When you
nice
have to try
house?
10 different bottles to like figure out the one that they want, and then once you find the one they want, you buy like 15 of them so you don't have to clean them as often. Like it's a whole thing. We just have
Yeah.
cabinets
Bottle
full of stuff, kitchen full of stuff. We have like I'm working on building a capsule wardrobe. So basically like doing just basics, neutral colors, and then my kind of accents are like hats and shoes. So like basically it means spending a bunch of money at Lululemon to get like basics and like real comfortable stuff.
Oh man.
But it's kind of nice because what I realized is like, I go to pick out clothes in the morning and like I don't have the mental capacity or the time at this point to go, what am I going to match with these pants? What am I going to match with this graphic t-shirt? What am I going to like? I just want colors that go with other colors. So no matter what I pick, like I just pick pants, shirt, shoes, hat, done.
Dude, I'm the
and don't have
same
to deal
way.
with it. So I'm really excited to just purge and clean out and simplify.
Yeah, it's a good, man. My wardrobe is like strictly like two brands. It's like Built, BYLT, Built Basics, right? I love them, and then Legends. I love they're like my athleisure, and there's no logos, there's no nothing. It's just like colors, and that's just my aesthetic. That's just
I'm
my
really
vibe.
into it. Just like plain colors. Done.
Dude, that's me, man. I got like and just like regular color, and the ones I got like it's got like an off color pocket. I'm like, jeez, but
Done and done.
dude, man, jeans. That's it, or joggers. So, man, that's been me. Anyway, I'm sure you're exhausted. I'll let you go. I got to get back to Hogwarts and dominate some wizards with Incendio.
Awesome.
Leviosa. I don't know. Anyway, well, thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any sort of reviews or feedback, please let us know. We've been having some audio volume issues like the last little bit, and guys on our Discord have been like, "Okay, it's off, man. Like we've been needing to crank up the volume." I'm so sorry. I'm still learning. This is new.
I think we might have it figured out. I'm hoping.
I'm thinking we have figured it out.
Push
So
my
anyway,
audio up a bit, so hopefully we all sound good.
hopefully we sound great, and it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. But until then, we wish you all the best. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.